You got it.
Hi everyone, I'm Geraldine Anilo, your host today. We're doing this series of conversations with different professionals from different fields to discuss the sorts of things music directors are being impacted on right now with everything going on with COVID. So we're looking at things on a financial standpoint, on an emotional standpoint, and we're going to have some as well for like branding and that sorts of topics that are a little bit different from our regular music directing programming, but are really here to help us deal with what's going on in the world right now. Before we get back to our preferred topics of keyboard programming and shows and casting and directors and things like that. My special guest today is Jarred Berman. Hi, Jarred. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So Jarred is an accountant. He has multiple certifications. He has the CPA, Certified Public Accountant. Also, he is a Certified Valuation Analyst, a Certified Fraud Examiner, and a Certified Forensic Investigation Professional. So he is here today to talk to us about really nitty-gritty financial stuff. We're going to talk budget. We're going to talk other topics like wills and power of attorneys and all sorts of things like that we may want to look at right now. So when I first talked to you, Jarred, to do this with me, you made a special document that I'm going to give to everybody. And the first step you had on that was apps. You were like, use a budgeting app, and you listed a few. Now, I know many people, and me included, I don't use any apps. Lots of people don't. So would you please walk us through what the app options are and why we should get them?
Definitely. Yeah. So the first option that a lot of people go to is mint.com. And Mint is probably the biggest one and the most widely well known. And basically, they all work the same way. Whether you use Mint, Budget Simple, or every dollar, whichever one you end up going with, they all work virtually the same. What happens is you go to the website, you make an account, and you link your financial institutions to those accounts, to the main brokerage account. So when you log in, you link the accounts, and what happens is it pulls the transaction data directly from the institution and puts it into nice, easy charts to read. And you can link, for instance, if you go to McDonald's, you can link it to meals. If you go to a Broadway show, you can link it to entertainment. If you pay your rent through a check, and you pay it to XYZ company, you can link that dollar amount and that check to, say, rent expense. And what happens is over time, there's trends that we can look at and analyze. So over the month of January, February, and March, you can see where you spent your money and where you didn't spend it, and possibly where you want to allocate it better. So no matter which app or website you choose to do, they all work virtually the same, and it makes it very easy for the users to follow along and budget their expenses appropriately for their financial means.
Now, something like Mint, does it work backwards? So can you join it and it's going to find like your past 3 months or 6 months?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that information you might actually have to enter in manually. But there is a way. If you go to, for instance, if you bank at Bank of America, you can go to bankofamerica.com, put in, say, January to March, download those transactions, and then import it into the website.
Ooh,
So
fun downloads.
you could definitely do that. And then going forward, and say we're in March and you want to do April through the end of the year, you just link the accounts, and going forward, it will just pull the information for you.
Wow. And so what about the apps? Because I know, like, from my understanding, there are two main different kinds of apps and services. Some that look backwards. So they're like, okay, here's how you spent your money. And then from that information, like what you described, you can make decisions moving forward. And other ones that are more planning based, that are going to help you plan in advance. Like, I'm going to use no more than this amount for this amount for that.
Right. So another cool option that Mint offers, I believe every dollar offers that one as well, is so you can download the app on your phone. You can track it on a daily basis if you feel like you're going over budget or under budget, and you want to know, where you pretty much stand, within that given month. And what's going to end up happening is you can look at it, see where you want to tweak your budget, and then look at the graphs, and then you can set up rules to notify you when you're getting close to your budget. So for instance, if you want to budget, say, $600 a month in groceries, and right now you're at, say, $505, you can set up a rule that says anytime that I'm close, within $100 variance to, my $600 budget, I can just say, I want a text message or I want a notification to come up on my phone saying, by the way, you have another $100 left for the budget for meals and entertainment this month. And what the cool thing about the graphs is that it makes it very easy for most users to view where they stand and see, okay, you know what? I did spend $600 last month on groceries. This month, I'm going to try to spend $550, and maybe I'll go out to dinner one time less. And I'll take that extra $50 and I'll put that towards, saving for my next car. And you can allocate that to, say, a car fund. And you can do all of that stuff through the rules of Mint or, Budget Simply, and do it right on the phone if that makes it easier for you.
What do you mean doing it right on the phone?
So, all of these websites have apps that you could download right onto your smartphone.
Oh, right on the phone, like by
Right.
typing. I don't know why, for some reason. Maybe because I am sitting here right next to a real old school phone. So I think
That is old school.
the phone, I can't do anything other than call with it.
Yeah. No, they're very good. They're very user friendly. Everything you can do on the website, you can do on the phone and through the app. So it makes it really easy to use going forward. It makes it very, what's the word, like real time, real life. You could be out there spending money right now, and you might be thinking like, oh my God, if I buy that cup of coffee, is that gonna, put me over my budget? You can check it if you really wanted to.
Now, what about the couples who are dealing with 3 different accounts? They're having their joint account and they're each having their own spending, or maybe even the couples that don't even have any kind of things together. It's like this person deals with these expenses, that person deals with those, and they keep everything separate. How do they
Right.
handle that process best?
Yeah, it's when every time you get involved with another person, right, it makes the process a little bit more difficult because you have to manage also expectations, right?
The
That's
moral of the
part.
story, don't be a polygamist. Is that it?
That would make things very
That's
difficult.
the advice of the day, everyone.
Yes. And so what happens is, and this is what I advise my clients, right? If people come to me, and actually this happened to me last week. A couple just signed up with me to do their tax return and some financial planning, and they're getting married. So obviously I ran through the gamut of regular things that you should be doing and looking at when you're getting married, but also one of their specific questions were, how do we join finances? And I said to them, first you need to really think about where you spend your money, and are you also okay with your spouse knowing where you spent your money? And sometimes you'd be surprised that a lot of people don't want their spouses knowing where they spent their money. For instance, spending $100 a week on your hair or makeup or nails, sometimes the husband might look at it and be like, that's a waste of money. And the wife might say, well, I need that, just because I have, a job that I always have to look on point. Maybe it makes her feel good. Whatever the reason is you have to be okay with the other person having transparency and seeing what you spend your money with. Then I usually recommend everyone keeping separate accounts. So a husband have their separate account, a wife have their separate account, and then you have 1 or 2 joint accounts. And with the joint account, everyone can either add equal amounts of money, or if somebody makes significantly more money, say the husband makes $100,000 and the wife makes $50,000, maybe the husband will put in, say, 66% of the money, and then the wife will put in, 33%, something that's, fair to both parties. But then when you add in like a budgeting app like this, right, whatever transactions whatever accounts that you add to these apps, it will pull in all the transactions. So for instance, if you're looking at your family budget, right, then what you might want to look at is really you might want to only link your family bank account, because technically, if you're running the family out of your joint account, then all of those expenses are going through that joint account, and you're only funding that joint account with your money that you earn from work, right? So if I have my separate account, my wife has her separate account, we really don't spend anything out, out of those accounts. We only just have that money and those accounts so that our direct deposit from our jobs can go into it. And then what we do is, for me and my wife, we each put in, say, $1,500 a month into this joint account. And so now every month, this joint account gets a $3,000 deposit. And we pay for the house, the real estate taxes, the food, the dog food, the cat food, the Broadway show tickets, Long Island Railroad tickets, whatever the case is, we pay for it out of that account. And then this account is what I would link to mint.com. And then I'll be able to see what we spend our money on as a joint couple.
Yeah, well, those examples you gave about the man making more and the woman spending it all on hair, that's a little old school, but it's still good point to be made, no matter what your circumstances is and who spends what on what. Is right now the best time to start budgeting? Because the reason I'm doing this series is music directors are having a lot of different finances, right? Even the people that kept their job, it may be different, they're spending differently. People may have gone on unemployment is changing, they may get some part-time job. I mean, the level of finances is really changing, and also a lot of music directors are freelancers where it's always changing anyways. And that kind of adds a level of difficulty to budgeting of well, I don't have the same set amount. And right now it's even more different than normal.
Right.
So how do you budget under those circumstances?
Well, what I come up with is it's a game plan, right? So you have to first start, and think about what happened and how am I going to react to this? So one of the first points that I usually say is stop pretty much everything almost essentially immediately so that you can develop this plan. And
so
once
wait,
you have this,
what do you mean by stop everything?
So pretty much if you lost your job, right, and there's no money coming in, I really try to say to people listen, tomorrow 9 o'clock in the morning when you're typically going to work, your job is now to come up with a game plan, right? So obviously you're not stopping everything. Some people have kids and you have a life to run. So at the end of the day, you want to just make sure that you get back on track, right? So if you can have and develop a game plan to get back on track, then I think you're going to be better off than most people who don't have that plan. And they always say, if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. And I truly believe that. So what I try to tell people is stop, look, and listen. And so stop, look what happened, and then listen to yourself, develop that game plan, and think outside the box and follow your gut.
If you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. That's so good. So you stop and you make that game plan. Concretely, what does that look like?
So anytime you have a plan or goals in life, I always say to write them down. And this is something I do personally, is every year on my birthday, I don't do it at year end, I usually do it on my birthday. And I've been doing this since I was 14 or 15 years old, and it's something that I got from my mom. And I usually, when I was younger, I would write it down and put it in a little, I think it was a little locker that I had at the top of my bed. Now I don't have that locker anymore, but I still do essentially the same thing. I think about my goals and where I want to be in the next year and how can I achieve them. So when you're thinking of a game plan, right, you want to start looking at the budget and seeing what's going to happen and what can potentially skew this budget. So if now income stopped, you have to really look at your expenses and how much money do you currently have and how much can you stretch that money to last you as long as possible based upon your given budget. And sometimes you might only be able to last, say, 2 or 3 weeks, right? And then you kind of have to think outside the box saying, you know what, I don't really have a job right now. Maybe it's time to pick up that second job or start maybe that side business I was always procrastinating on. Maybe I'm really good as an artist and, maybe I'll paint an extra couple of pictures. And I know this person offered me like $1,000 for my artwork last year. You know what, maybe I'll reach out to them, see if maybe they're interested. And might be able to drum up business. You might find yourself in a business long-term out of this time of stress, So you never know where it could potentially lead. But coming up with that game plan and figuring out maybe a second source of income if you need it, and developing maybe a new set of skills. There's websites like Udemy out there. You can take free courses, develop your skill set, and become even a better employee and a better artist long term.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about the importance of having a goal and knowing where you're going. And I think a lot of people have goals when life is as usual. But right now, it's like you're a music director, you're a musician, you were living your goal or you were getting closer to your music goals, and now that's not happening. So what kind of goals can you reasonably have on a financial level when you don't have answers, right? Because of course, it's easy to say we'll get a job, but I know people who have been trying and not necessarily finding it. So what would be a reasonable goal one can have for the next at least 6 months, like until January?
Me personally, I think that your end goal hasn't changed, right? This unfortunate circumstance of COVID-19 occurred, but at the end of the day, your goals are still to become that director or still get or solidify that job of what you were previously doing, right? So as long as you don't lose the skill set and maybe you stay active in your network, like, stay in touch with the coworkers, previous bosses, maybe potential new coworkers and new bosses, just by staying active on social media and those groups and saying, hey, you're sending that email to your last coworker saying, hey, how's it going? How's you and the family doing? Just staying in touch with them. Sometimes it really doesn't take a lot just to stay connected with people. And obviously even meetings like this, even though we're miles away from each other, we still have that face-to-face, conversation, and we could still talk to each other, and we still connect on a pretty personal level, even though, we have this whole COVID situation happening, and, there's no chance of us meeting anytime real soon, but, definitely sending that email, making that phone conversation, reaching out, maybe starting a group that you're interested in. You might find a group, about either directors or musicians. You might even say you like to play tennis and you can't find a group about tennis, but maybe you can create one and other people will join the group, and all of a sudden, you might have a whole new network of people to rely on and pull from and talk to and communicate with and exchange information with. And that's something that you can't really replace. And in 6 months to a year, hopefully when this thing is a little bit, behind us, I have a feeling it still will be around, but I hope that it is further behind us, that in 6 months to a year, you can rely on those networks and you can call that person up and say, you know what, I'm still looking for this job, and, I'm still looking for an opportunity, and maybe they might be able to help you out. So networking and building your skill set, developing a second source of income, they're always, good routes to take, and definitely keeping them, in the back of your mind is definitely a good idea.
I love it. So keep your eyes on the prize. Don't get rid of your goal. Just postpone it.
Definitely.
On it. If anything, it might make the goal arriving even easier, because now you have more time to get to it for no means of your own. Maybe it's actually very helpful. Who knows?
Exactly. And I always say to people that, a lot of people come to me for financial advice, right? They want to be able to buy a house or a car, and they feel like they can't do it, right? It's not my job to tell you whether or not that you can or you can't do it. It's my job to figure out a way for you to do it, right? So, some people come to me and they make, say, $1 million a year, and they're trying to afford a $50 million house. And some people come to me and they're making $40,000 a year and they're trying to afford a $200,000 house. At the end of the day, everyone's still trying to reach their goals. And you might just need help figuring out how to achieve that goal, because I think a lot of people look at a goal and say, I can't do it, I'm never going to get there. And they self-doubt and they put themselves down. And realistically, you just need a little bit of a boost, just like a child does. As parents, we're supposed to pick our kids up and help them along the way. You might just need that on a professional level, and you have somebody just review your finances, pick you up a little bit, say, yes, you can afford it, but you need to do it this way, and then maybe the way you were doing it in the past might lead you to a different result than what you actually want.
Yeah. Something in that document you sent when we were talking about talking today, was that you had a whole thing about how right now is the most perfect time to look at other financial aspects of your life. And you included in that list will, power of attorney, life insurance. Can you please give us a bit of why it's the good time to do that right now when it seems like there's other priorities that should take place, and B, what each of these, what are some criteria people should look at for each of these?
Definitely. So obviously, first and foremost, you need to take care of yourself and your family, right? So making sure you have enough money and the game plan to last however long this thing is going to last us, and creating that second source of income if it's necessary. You definitely need to make sure all of that stuff is in place before you could even think about what I call cleaning up shop. So once you have that stuff in place, then you can use your downtime, because you might not be working as much. You might not have the responsibilities you typically do have. You probably will find yourself with a little extra free time on your hands. So with that free time, you can choose to use it however you see fit. And what I like to do is say, clean up shop, review your finances, review your documents, and use the time wisely, so that, in a year or 2 years, when this thing picks up again and the economy is back in order and you're working full time and you're back in the grind, you don't have to think about this kind of stuff again. So for instance, we spoke about the will, the living will. A will is basically a document that directs your initiatives upon your death, right? So nobody wants to think about, when am I going to die? But a will basically say, here is what I have. This is what I don't have also. I would like all of my money and house or whatever you leave to my wife or to my kids, and you can split it up evenly. You don't have to split it up at all. You can be as fair or as unfair as you really want to be, because I've seen everything. And it's interesting, and it's completely private. It's between you and an attorney. It's definitely a good idea to do it because you avoid probate in the United States, which is just a costly and ineffective way of, dividing up assets. So definitely having a will is a good idea with that. You could do it also for free online. I usually don't recommend those. If you look at a will that was done online, and if you look at one that was done through a professional, usually you can tell the difference. Even a regular person off the street can definitely see the difference in quality of workmanship and the words used in the will. A living will basically says that, I'm on bed rest, or I'm in the hospital, I can't make my own decisions, God forbid something happens, I need to know things are taken care of. And that will allow your loved ones to really make sure your assets, your wishes are fulfilled the way that you wanted them to be fulfilled. The power of attorney, a lot of people don't have it, but it is a necessary document. And what happens with the power of attorney is you can give it to anybody over health issues, you can give it to somebody over financial issues, and it gives somebody else the power to make decisions on your behalf. So obviously you want to leave that to somebody who you really trust, because if you can't talk, or you're in the hospital, you're away, this document really gives somebody else permission to move money. It gives permission to change around assets, beneficiaries. They can pretty much do anything that you would do with a signed and legal power of attorney. A healthcare proxy is another great idea. And necessarily, it's not a necessary item to have, but it's definitely also, it's just a good idea to have all of these documents. And just so you know, a lot of attorneys, they package these deals together. So if you hire an attorney to do a will, they'll probably throw in for another $50, $100, $150, depending upon what their fee structure is. They'll probably do a will, living will, power of attorney. They'll package the whole thing all together. And each of these documents are just a few pages long. But a healthcare proxy is a document that says, in the event of your incapacitation or you're in the healthcare system and they need to pull the plug, or if your wish was for them to pull the plug, that somebody else could make that decision for you. And a lot of the times, because of COVID-19, I had a few people pass away, unfortunately, and they didn't have some of these documents that we're talking about. I actually have two clients that did pass away, and one of them had a will, and one of them did not have a will. And each of them, the one that had the will actually had a power of attorney, but he didn't have like a living will. So, and then the other person didn't have anything. And then all of a sudden, now their wife is going through all of this stuff and they have kids. It's really a messy situation. So $100, I'm sorry, say that again?
So sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. It's not good, and I don't wish it upon anybody. But it is a fact of life that people, pass away, and, we have to, deal with it head on. And having these documents in place really just makes the process easier. It's not that expensive, and it's
how much are we looking at?
I know an attorney that works in the United States here. He's on Long Island with me. For all of our viewers, I'm in Plainview, New York, which is part of Long Island. I have an attorney that works with me directly, and for my clients, he usually offers a package deal, and it starts around $400.
I see.
Right?
And what about life insurance?
Okay, so life insurance, there's two major possibilities that you can go with, a term policy or a universal or whole life policy, which is known as like permanent. Most of the time, I recommend term policies. It's for a specific term for a set amount of years. Let's just call it 20 years for now. Let's just say it's $1 million policy. It might cost somebody, say, $1,000 a year for something like that. And so it basically insures your life for 20 years, up to $1 million. And if God forbid, you pass away within 20 years, you name a beneficiary to take on that money. When you pass away, they'll have funds to support their house, their kids. Most people don't need life insurance unless you obviously have a loved one that's supporting kids. Maybe your wife or your husband is going to be left with a major mortgage on their house and two young kids. So you don't want them to really worry about, like, God forbid you passed away. They have enough money in the bank now to kind of support them and make the grieving process a lot easier.
Well, that is all very helpful. It can get confusing with the differences between life insurance, will, and all these different things. This is also so helpful. When should people know, like, how when your financial situation changes and you're having less, all of a sudden, something that's very important is saving. How do you know if you should be prioritizing saving or if you should be prioritizing spending on those very important things like a will and life insurance and such?
It's a hard decision, and a lot of it is what you're comfortable with, right? So some people are used to making money and spending it and not really saving that much, and some people are used to saving 20, 30, 40% a year, right? So I think the first thing is what you're comfortable with, and part of my job is figuring out what are my clients comfortable with. Some of my clients are comfortable saving 2%, and some of them want to save at least 20%. So, I think what you should do is recognize what your comfort level is. And also, you have to be realistic too. So if you need to spend the money so that you can live, that's a necessity. There's nothing you could do about that, right? But, you know, having like a life insurance policy is such a good idea. It's almost like it is a necessity. So how do you choose, you know, a life insurance policy versus savings, right? And the way I would decide is if I have children and a wife or a husband at home today, right now, and if I died today, they would be in major distress because of their financial situation, or they wouldn't have enough money to make it. Then I would prioritize the life insurance because, you know, obviously I'm hoping I don't die today, but in the event that I did, you know, I know that my family and loved ones are okay, right? Versus if I lived, right, and I don't have the policy, then I can work another, say, 10, 20, 30 years and try to earn more and more money so that not only are we eating and saving, but we're also, investing and possibly living, you know, a nice lifestyle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I thought I had another question, but I think you answered everything so thoroughly that for once I am left speechless and full of clarity. So I hope it is not just me, but everyone watching. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time, Jarred.
No, it was great. My pleasure. Anytime you want me back, I'd be honored. And I hope everybody learned a little bit of something. Again, don't let anyone ever tell you something that you're not comfortable with. You know, the main important thing to take away is develop the game plan, put it to action. And if you don't know something, there's somebody else out there that does know. So seek help where you need it. And, you know, you can't be ashamed because everybody needs help at some point. So, yeah.
If you want to reach Jarred, you can find him at jbermancpa@gmail.com. That's jbermancpa@gmail.com. Jarred Berman, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.